Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Evolve Through God. My name is Angela Goodman, and today I have an amazing guest with us, and she is going to help me with her name because I don't want to mess it up. So Marta, I think Sauret Greca?
Yeah, you
Yes,
got
I know. It's funny. We had the opportunity to meet a month and a half ago, I believe, when we were on an event together, virtual.
it.
And I had seen her name for about a month or so and kept trying to, like, how do you pronounce that? How do you pronounce that? And I still, here we are a month and a half later, we're working on another project together, and I still failed
No,
miserably.
you did good. Yeah, no, you did awesome. Yeah, technically it's Marta, but nobody says it that way. No,
Oh, I love that.
yeah, but it's, my mom and dad. Whenever we stayed in pockets of time, my husband would always laugh. He'd be like, Marta, 'cause
Oh, I
that's how he'd
love
call my
it.
name.
So what nationality are your parents?
My dad is from France, and then he moved to Italy, and then that's where he met my mom, and then they actually moved us here in 1995 when
Oh,
with all
wow.
of us siblings. Yeah, insanity. I don't know how they found the courage to do that. That's crazy scary.
That's amazing. Okay, so I don't want to we'll get back into that
Yeah.
because I don't want to get derailed too far, but I'm so excited because we haven't had an opportunity to really talk about your faith, although I know you're a very faithful person. So I'm excited to hear more today about your relationship with God, how you came into your faith and kind of what's transpired in your life. So if you want to start with where it all started for you.
Sure. Well, my dad worked in the Vatican, and we lived in Rome, and he was able to get me and my twin brother baptized by Pope John Paul II. And
Wow.
growing up, both my mom and my dad, this is actually how they met. They were part of a nonprofit organization called the Focolare Movement, which was founded during World War II in a little teeny tiny town in Italy, by a woman named Chiara Lubick, who was just trying to help people and left her family basically to just start helping people during the war,
Now
with
say that again. What was it called? What movement
it's
was it?
called the Focolare Movement. Um,
Focolare movement. Okay.
However, I will say that, like any other movement, any other religious organization, it became very hierarchical and political, and
Mm,
very much so like you wanted to get near Chiara, and that was like an honor. And my great uncle was a co-founder. His name, he actually was dubbed Chiaretto, which was kind of a nickname because they were like, in cahoots to run this. Cahoots is probably the wrong word, but anyways, they saying he was a priest, and so it was like a big deal. But yeah, growing up, it felt very much like you needed to behave a certain way, you needed to go to certain things, you needed to complete certain stages of the process. There was different hierarchical titles like Gen and Focolarino, and you could become a Focolarino or Focolarina, and that would mean that you would devote your life to the non to the movement, and you wouldn't, start a family, and that was just your calling.
okay.
So that's where very religious upbringing, very
Okay.
religious. Yeah.
Okay. So they
Catholicism can be like
met.
that.
Your parents met in that movement,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
then they obviously got married at some point in time, and
Yeah.
then you have brothers and sisters, I think,
I have
or
two brothers and two sisters. Yes.
oh wow. Okay. So family of five. So
Yeah.
Good Catholic
Yeah.
family of five.
Yeah.
So I mean, what did your young life look like? Like, how much time did your parents actually spend in the church? What were they doing? When did you really get introduced? Remember,
I
your
think
early
I mean,
context.
from what I can remember, in Italy, we moved here when I was 9, and all I can remember then was just like a tons of focolare meetings and going to church on Sunday, but it didn't, feel intense. And here it was just like if we were going on a vacation, it was either at a seminary or a
Mm,
convent or at one of these family retreats it was called a Mariapolis. That was led by the Focolare. So, like, those were our vacations.
that's great. So when you moved to the United States, was it to help expand the movement?
No, my
Okay.
dad worked in the Vatican. And I'm so sorry. We are
No,
live,
you're
but
fine.
my water is in my car. Thank you. Sorry. I'm really thirsty, guys.
You have to stay hydrated. You have to stay hydrated. I do a gallon a day, so don't worry about it.
um, so it was because he worked in the Vatican, and that also was a very political environment. And my dad was just feeling like I am not cut out for this. If you met my dad, he's the most happy-go-lucky guy. Like he's, PhD philosophy and theology. Like he's like that mad genius, writing all these books and prayerfully. I mean, he's just like an eccentric guy, which we love dearly. And it just wasn't his thing. So he wanted, and he, in the economy at that time, and still to this day, he always is saying, if we would have stayed in Italy, you guys would not be able to live the lives that you get to live today. So we're so glad we came here in the United States. But he was offered a job to teach philosophy at a local university to the greater Pittsburgh area. And when he got here, they said, sorry, the position is no longer available. He's like, I have leased a house. I have brought my 5 kids. I have quit my job. I have given up our apartment in Italy.
Yeah.
You're going to give me a year. And that was, I think, where a lot of the money stories came for me here, because it was like he'd have that job, that teaching job for a year, and then he'd have this teaching job for a year. And I don't know if any of you who are listening or watching, or Angela, for you as well, if you're in the world of academia, you know that in itself is very political, and really want to get in the good graces and have the connections. And he was often an adjunct professor, and it was just kind of like that contract was up, and that contract was up, and that contract was up. And same with my mom. She was always like, I hope I have enough students, and otherwise they'll cancel my class. I just remember her always being worried about that, because she would teach.
Wow.
Well, when we moved to the United States, she couldn't work. She did not have a visa. So, I mean, that was like hard stuff for her now that I look back. But she's, when she was able to work, taught French and Italian and other subjects as well, like Latin, religion, things like that.
That's cool. So as you were growing up, then you get here, and he ends up not getting a permanent position. What happens to that side, that church side, that Catholic side? Like, do they keep you guys in church? Like, what does that look like for you once you get into the States? How does your life change that way?
Church every Sunday. If we were ever on a car ride, we were saying the rosary, and we would try to be like, we'll say it in our heads. And he'd be like, okay, but every time I say amen, you need to say amen. And we'd be like, forget it. We'll just say it out loud. Thank you.
So that was just like normal life for you. Normal life for you was just growing up very immersed in the Catholic faith as you were growing up. So in that time period, did you ever feel the presence of God in that time period, or was it really more like, this is just kind of what my life is and it's normal for me and I don't really know?
No, all the time. I prayed all the time as a kid. I remember at bedtime, I would like close my eyes and I'd put my hand down. I'd be like, okay, Jesus, hold my hand.
Oh, I love that.
Gosh, I feel I'm holding my hand. So that's the kind of things I did at bedtime as a kid.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great. Has there ever, so then as you grow up, tell us a little bit about what your life looks like once you move out of the house and you're not with your parents anymore. Like, does any of that change for you? What does that look like for you?
Well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit because, so when we moved to the United States at first, it was like cool to have like this kid from a different country, but very soon after they realized just how different the culture was. And to be honest, I didn't shower that much. I smelled. I'm not saying that's the Italian culture. I don't want to give a bad name. I just wasn't, I don't know. I was just a weird kid, which I own now. I love it. I had these big glasses, and then I had lice for like 3 months. And so they cut my hair, like buzzed it short. So I didn't retain friends. And so that led to, it's funny how something that happened in 5th grade, it's still like something you think about as an adult, right? Because you had with that most traumatic part as a child. So I was just telling my kids, I remember like calling to like try to get invited to a birthday party, and the mom getting on the phone and being like, sorry, you're not coming. My kids are like, you still think about that? I'm like, I will.
That was seriously traumatic at that age.
Yeah. So anyway, so then that turned into, I was just like the worst teenager ever. I'm talking drugs, promiscuity, getting arrested, sneaking out of the house. I mean, I put myself in a situation that only God had kept me safe. Honestly, that I was not murdered or violently, otherwise
Yeah.
is a miracle. And it's only because of God that I decided to stop. And just like there's
What
no
was
reason.
what was
Nobody
that
gave me.
moment? What was that moment for you?
I just don't even remember the moment. I just remember the feeling of like, I'm not going to be this person anymore for no reason. Like my parents didn't have a talk with
Mhm.
me. Nobody had a talk with me. Nothing. I mean, unless it was something subconscious that I absorbed and I wasn't aware of. Otherwise, either way, that would be God, right?
Mhm.
But I remember, I mean, I was just thinking about this leading up to this
Mhm.
episode.
Mhm.
I was able to count at least 10 people who
Mhm.
died of overdoses that I was very close friends with, either overdoses or
Wow.
drunk driving or something related. At least four that something, very tragic happened to them. So there is no rhyme or reason of why, other than God, of why I am not alongside them, and there's just no
And
reason.
those were close friends of yours that you all were
Yeah,
doing
close
the
friends.
same same
We
kind of.
slept over at each other's houses,
Yeah.
hung out. At that age where you're like super close friend with one person.
Mhm.
I mean, I ran away with one of them, and when I think 14, we ran away together. It didn't last long. The police caught us like down the road. They just called our parents to come get us. But,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. So there isn't a specific like moment where you were like, this is enough for me. So it wasn't like the loss of a friend or, a
no.
specific situation that you remember that was really that trigger
Uh,
point for you.
it just was awful. It was awful. It was just
Mm-hmm.
awful because once you start going down that pattern, it's a downward spiral of then everybody looks at you as this person. So then you self-medicate even more.
Mm-hmm.
And, now as an adult entrepreneur, you can, relate to this. We're just like, we have so many moving balls in the air. I think I was just bored. And I think I was a thrill seeker. And if that meant doing very dangerous things at the age of 13, then that's what I was going to do. I was just like fearless, entertaining myself, and having no qualms about safety whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I do remember I had already started to get out of it. And I remember talking to this guy friend of mine who I was like, I think I'm going to get back into that stuff. And he's like, no, don't. Like, you're so much better as this person. And I do credit him for me not going back
Mm-hmm.
to, and he did pass away. He passed away during our adult years through a car accident that
Oh,
by the sermon I picked up on that there was some sort of under the influence involved.
and he was a friend of yours, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had such little self-worth. He even I mean, I really liked him. He even asked me to like be his girlfriend. And I just was like, I felt so uncomfortable. There were like really great guys at that time that would
Mm-hmm.
ask me to be their girlfriend. And I would be like, I felt so uncomfortable because I just felt like you are too clean cut and good for me. Like that is, what would I even do if I met your family? Like I'm not subconsciously, like that was a feeling that I had. I felt
Yeah.
comfortable with it. Like I am not up to that standard whatsoever. I chose to date guys that treated me like garbage. And there was some activities under the influence that now knowing what I know
Mm-hmm.
is probably not consensual whatsoever. But back then we didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just kind of the only life
Mm-hmm.
you knew. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you go through this traumatic time in your life and you have all of these people who are no longer here with us.
Mm-hmm.
How old were you when you started to kind of turn this corner and say, you know what, I just don't want to be this person anymore?
So it actually started when I was not even 13 years old, and it came to a close when I was probably 15, turning 16, which is when I met my husband, who I am married to now and have 7 children.
Oh.
Yes.
And how long have you guys been together?
We have been together. I should know this.
Well, if you were
20 years.
16, if you were 16, you know how old you are today?
22. Well, we met when I was 15, 23
Okay.
years. I don't know, 20, 23, 20, 22, 20, 23 years, something like
Oh,
that.
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
But we've been
awesome.
married 15 years. That I do know.
Okay. So
Yeah.
when the two of you met, what was it that drew you to him?
Nothing. I was not interested, but he actually, he had a dream a few nights prior. No, I'm sorry. He hadn't had a dream. His grandmother called him a little bit before us meeting and said, I had a dream. Your late grandfather came to me in my dream and said that he's sending a little Italian girl to come take care of you. And then shortly after, I don't know if it was a few
Ooh,
days, a few weeks, it
yeah.
was, yeah, it was like he met me and my friend was like, oh, this is Marta. She's from Italy. And he was like, he told his best friend that night, that's my wife. That's who I'm going to marry. Yeah. And we've been
Wow.
together since. Yeah.
Wow. So for those listeners who are not watching, I got absolute full body
Oh,
chills when Marta said that.
yeah.
And again, when you continued on with the story also. So for sure God was working. God was
Yeah.
working through his grandfather to put the two of
Mhm.
you together.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Thank,
You are so blessed. Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you.
So you guys met when you were 16, and then has it been all sunshine and roses for you since
Yeah.
then?
No, that does not make for interesting times, does it? Yeah, I mean, it's like, where do I begin?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, you're 16, and from your 13 through 16-year-old years, having been someone who's a little bit that way myself, like I know you're like don't want anybody to tell you what to do. You don't want anybody to tell
Yeah.
you where to go. So you are like
Yeah.
this wild mare
Yeah.
who just wants to live life. So I'm sure that was an interesting dynamic when you first got
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, well, actually, it was like because my dad was always looking for a new position, sometimes that took him working outside of the city. And so my mom was left at home to take care of, like, at that point, five teenagers, and my dad was gone, Monday through Friday. He'd drive home weekends, and sometimes he
Mhm.
didn't even get to do that because it was exhausting. And so I think I had some daddy issues. And so I think that's part of the reason that I acted out as well. And then he would
Mhm.
come home and obviously want to connect with his daughter, and I would, rebel. So I think when I met my husband, I had gone through that whole stunt and I was like wanting to be taken care of and
Mhm.
to look. I mean, he's significantly older than me. That's part of the pickup of the story. Um, but I wanted that figure in my life, somebody to like tell me what to do,
Yeah.
and that's what created, I think, the issue is we met at that stage of life where I was so enamored and wanted to do everything he said when, like, and then as I grew older and, we started to have kids, obviously a person changes significantly from
Mhm.
16 to 38 and seven kids in between. And
Yeah.
so that's been, the thing.
Yeah. So is he has quite a few years on you, or he's just a few years older than you?
No, he's 10 years older than me. So
Oh, that's not that bad. That's not that bad. My second husband is 16 years older than me. So
yeah, but I mean, like,
yeah.
when you look at that, it's not even like I'm trying to justify anything, but if
Yeah.
you knew him at that age, he was like a teenage guy, honestly. He lived with his parents,
Yeah.
he was in a band, he delivered flowers for a flower shop, and that's how we met because my friend's mom actually worked in the flower shop and said, you need to meet this girl. And he was in a
Oh,
band and he encouraged us to go watch his show at a Starbucks. So
I love that. I love
yeah.
that. All right, so the two of you meet, you obviously get into a relationship at that point in time. What does your relationship with God look like in the end of your teenage years? Do you
Still
have any kind
strong.
of yeah?
I think I honestly, actually, when I was in college, before I had, it must have been the summer before I became pregnant, I actually went on retreat for the Focolare Movement and I did an internship for one of their publications. They have multiple magazines and publishing houses and all that good stuff. And I remember that when I got done with that, I thought that I wanted to be a focolarina, which means you don't have any romantic relationships and you dedicate your life to the Focolare movement and the mission and the message. But my friend was like, no, you're not doing that. And I was like, you're right.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
So I'm glad that short stint, didn't last. But it's always been strong. It's always been
Yeah.
strong. It's, I think it's what's gotten me through so many things, like many of us, right? Shit can hit the fan, and sorry for swearing, but
Yeah, you're fine.
circumstances are just circumstances. They're just human situations, and there's nothing that God can't move miracles to can't make miracles happen to move through. So
Yeah.
and I get that from my dad. My mom was a worrier, but my dad was always like, everything's gonna work out. And everything does work out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he had a heart attack when we moved from Italy, because of that situation of
Mm-hmm.
this financial stress of having 5 kids and a wife in a different country. You don't know anyone, you don't even really know the language, and you're just trying to make sure that you have a job and you can pay the bills. So he had a heart attack. But even then, it's like he just, I mean, to be able to move to a different country with that many children, and
Mm-hmm.
like you have to have faith.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. You have to have faith. So, what does the practice of faith look like for you?
Uh,
So, even through that time period when you're younger and you're still learning but deeply faithful, like what does your practice of faith look like when you are challenged?
Practice of faith. I don't know that I've ever been challenged to the point of thinking that that there isn't a God or that he doesn't have my back. I just like no matter what happens, I think I've always felt like, well, that that must be happening for me. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'll find out, maybe I won't, but that must have happened for me. Somehow that's creating an unfolding of whatever the divine path is meant to be. And again, my dad's that way, and it's helped tremendously with caring for him through his Alzheimer's. But I think maybe whenever my mom died of cancer, that's I think a moment when I kind of lost my mojo and I was like, oh, I guess everything doesn't work out for me. I was totally expecting that story to be like, just
Yeah.
kidding. She's actually going to live for years whenever she got the diagnosis of um, having, probably days to weeks. I was still positive and talking about the next coming holidays and my siblings being like, Marta, I don't think she's going to be around. I don't think she's going to be able to do it.
How old were you at that time?
That was just 3 years ago.
Oh, it was three
Yeah.
years ago.
Coming up on 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. She was
And
young
me,
though. Yeah.
she was in her, she was just short of, she just turned 69.
Okay, that's young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so she just her passing, I think I just kind of lost my mojo for everything. And that energetically, you kind of go down a downward spiral of you're not doing your divine readings anymore. You're not, reading books about the divine truth. Um, you're not, like a lot of things feel like they don't even matter. Like, what am I doing here?
Mm-hmm.
What's the point if like my best friend is going to die? Even though I had just
Yeah.
had a baby literally 2 weeks prior to her passing, but I was like so positive and optimistic that I was like, no, this is going to be another story that you hear about that they've given
Mm-hmm.
her days to live and she's going to live for years,
Mm-hmm.
and she did not.
Mm.
She
Yeah,
did not, but
that's
it's
really
with us
hard.
today.
That's really hard. What did you do during that time when you kind of obviously you're mourning her, you're grieving her loss, and you're disconnected from the faith side of it, right? Because you feel it's obviously the grief and the loss of your mom. What did you do to kind of replant yourself and help your mindset out at that time?
I don't know that I did. I think that God just had to work through me, and I just had to
Mm-hmm.
go through that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And for no rhyme or reason, once again, I just felt called once again to be more prayerful and be more, go to church, take my dad to church every week with me, and do my 10 minutes of divine reading every day, and praying with the kids multiple times a day, and
Mm-hmm.
meditation and all that good stuff. I just had to, I had to let it flow through me. I had to let it happen and go through that grief. But even then, when she passed away, to every moment I felt, okay, well, now she's at peace because she had gone through so much medically. I mean, this was her third time having cancer. She'd had 2 stents put into her heart. She had surgery on her trachea. She had thyroid disease. I mean, she had so many health problems that I think about now. And I'm like, that must have been exhausting to live through. Exhausting. But she just powered through. But you could tell she was exhausted.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
was done. She was ready to go.
Yeah.
She was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember feeling sad when she's like, do not resuscitate. This is it. And so I just that felt peaceful to know that like, okay, she really has lived quite a life, and she's
Mm-hmm.
had 5 kids. She's had 14 grandkids. She's left her legacy, and she's ready to go. And with good reason. She
Yeah.
was really supporting.
Were you with her when she passed?
Oh, that's a story, Angela.
Oh, well, that's why I'm supposed to ask that question.
Yeah. That's gonna be the chapter in our book together.
Yeah.
No, I had just had a baby at home 2 weeks
Mhm.
prior, and I snuck him. And my mom at the time, she was in a skilled nursing facility because we were realizing my dad couldn't take care of her. I had just literally just given birth, so she couldn't come into my house for me to care for her. And so that was the choice that we made. And then when it came time for her passing, they brought her to the hospital.
Mhm.
And at this hospital, children were not allowed, but I still snuck my newborn baby in
Mhm.
because what I was doing was I was running to the parking lot where my husband and the baby were, breastfeeding the baby, running up to be with her, running back down. Everybody was crying. I was crying. My husband was crying. The baby was crying. My siblings were crying. I was like, I am not here for anyone. I'm not here. I'm not present right now for anybody, not even myself.
Yeah.
So I was like, F it. I'm going to just bring the baby in like he's a purse. And they came to realize that the baby was at the hospital, and they gave me a warning the night before, and they said, he can be here tonight, but you have to figure something else out for tomorrow if she makes it through. And you're like, okay, so if my mom lives through the night, then I have to, what a weird thing to say. But anyways, I had to take the baby home that night. My husband, came to get us. He was concerned about, I hadn't slept. I just had a baby, and he
Mhm.
was concerned about like, just this is too much. Just come home, get some
Yeah.
sleep. The
Yeah.
baby to sleep, instead of like just in a car seat or in your arms in the fluorescent lights of a hospital. So I did that. It looked like my mom was going to make it through the night, and then I just snuck them right back in on the day after. But I wasn't that sly. Now that I think back, I think I was also carrying like 3 coffees and croissants.
And I mean, you
Uh,
hadn't slept and you were dealing with the
yeah,
grief of losing
and
your mom, and you
I
just
just
had a baby. Like, yeah, yeah.
I look back and I'm like, they probably saw me coming from a mile away. Like, oh, there's this chick again with her baby. And I went about up to be with my mom, and brought my dad coffee and croissants to try to give him some comfort. And I think my brother was there and his wife, and we hear a knock on the door, and it is hospital security there to escort me out. So I, had my baby, tears in my eyes, said goodbye to my mom, and my family's like, we have to do something. We can't just let this happen. We have to talk to them. And I'm like, this is her moment. This is your moment with her. Do not worry about me. I will be fine. I'm going to say goodbye. Um, Try to figure something out, and I'll come back. And, they escorted me out to the elevator, made sure I left. And I went home, and within a few hours, the sun was shining, and it was Easter Sunday. And
Oh,
we're trying to make this special for my kids who are losing their nonna, and we don't want the two to be
yeah.
associated. And as the kids are outside doing Easter egg hunt run by other people, not me, obviously at this point, I'm a hot mess.
Mhm.
I got the text that she had passed. In fact, actually, it's kind of comical because I like to find the humor in literally everything. And this is the
Mhm.
least comical thing in my life. But I get a text
Mhm.
from my sister that says, Mom's dead. And I was like, are you kidding me? It's like,
What in the world?
or something along those lines. But it's
Yes.
family, right? That's a dysfunction. You got to find the laughter. And within a few days, we were, even that night, we were joking about how we need to get the baby like a uniform for like prison, with the little stripes,
Mhm.
or like a bright
Yeah.
orange.
Yeah,
Something.
because it was like you was a criminal.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just funny because the whole process of giving birth to him, up to giving birth, I got so much flack from the medical system about, you really shouldn't give birth to him at home. You should really do this in a hospital. But then I bring him to a hospital and I'm kicked out. But every story has a divine reason, right? And
Yeah.
and that, I think, was what I know, that's what inspired me to start looking into the life insurance business and the accelerated death benefit rider and investments. And
Mhm.
in hindsight, there's so much that I would have done differently for caring for my mom at the end of life to be in alignment with what she wished. But
Mhm.
when you're in the moment, you're in the
So
moment,
all of that, so you didn't start doing any of that work until she passed.
Yeah.
Okay. So that has
Mm-hmm.
only been a few years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Coming up on 3 years that I started the journey of that
Yeah.
education. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got to see the direct impact of how
Yeah.
that makes a difference within a family.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
And if you have a life insurance policy, make sure you have that accelerated death benefit because if you have that, you can access up to a certain percentage of that
Yeah.
policy
During when you're sick.
during that if you get that end of life diagnosis for your end of life care. And had we known whether she had that, she could have peacefully passed at home. We could have had the budget for
Hmm. Hmm.
because in
Hospice to come in.
Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, care at home is out of pocket, whereas a skilled nursing facility and a hospital are covered by health insurance. But in hindsight, I had ample funds. I could have paid for it, and now knowing what I know, how I could have done it. I didn't see it then. I
It
didn't like
happened the way it was supposed to.
exactly.
It
Yes,
happened the way it was supposed to.
exactly.
And had
Yes,
it happened the other way at that time, you may not have gotten the added benefit of now
right.
being able to serve other people with the
Exactly
knowledge
right.
that you
Yes,
now have.
exactly. Everything happens as it's meant to, when it's meant to,
Yeah.
how it's meant to unfold.
Yeah.
Um, but now I know so much through
Yeah. Yeah.
experience, and so I can help others
Well, we
make those.
have like this huge chunk of years of your life that we didn't get to touch today, but I want
Yeah,
to be respectful because I know you've got some appointments you have to keep. So
yeah.
I'm going to roll into our questions, and then what we'll
Okay,
do is we'll schedule another episode. How about that?
yeah. And you can
Yeah.
come on my show twice too. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So it'll be all good because I know there's a lot of stuff we didn't get to dig into or talk to. So I want to make sure that we do that in the future time. So
Yeah.
all right. So this first question is for our listeners who are just kind of starting their faith journey. We have a lot of listeners who are kind of fresh on their faith journey. And so I like to ask the guests, other than the Bible, and you've alluded to some of this, but other than the Bible, what resources have you either listened to or read or absorbed in some way that have allowed you to really further know God?
hmm It's Not Your Money by, I will come back to you on that, but it's not.
We'll put it in the show notes. We'll put it in the show
Yeah,
notes. You can send
it's
it to
one of
me.
my favorite books of all time. I know it's Tanya, but I have so many friends whose name are Tanya's, and now only their last names are coming to mind. But and then the A Happy Pocket Full of Money,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
So a good
then
one.
The Upper Limit. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Quantum Leap, The Upper Limit. One of those.
Okay.
It's those two are the titles of the books. Yeah, they're just I love them.
Okay.
I will listen to them and read them over and over and over and over and
Yeah.
over again.
Yeah. And they're all based on universe and creator guidance. And yeah, I have read
Yeah.
them. So I love
And
them.
one of my favorite prayers of all time comes from It's Not Your Money. It's a beautiful prayer.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. All right. So
Mm-hmm.
the second question, this actually happened to me while we were on the call. But when you are in connection with spirit, and we didn't really talk with you too much about that other than you're holding hands with Jesus at nighttime when you were a kid. But when you're in connection with spirit, what does that physically feel like for you? Because it's different for everyone. If you get that moment where you feel like you really are filled with Holy Spirit, what does that feel like for you?
I mean, ecstasy, right? Tingles all throughout, the skies are opening up and a literal rainbow is coming through, and just that moment of clarity of like, I see what you are trying to say. I just remember the 3 years that we've talked about, the past 3 years had been very difficult for other reasons as well, on top of, losing my mom and having two babies and two miscarriages between the two babies. It was like, what the F? What are you doing? And I guess that answers your question previously. And I didn't think of it sooner. And I remember going out on my deck and going, what are you doing? I just remember clearly feeling the sentiment of it. I'm getting chills now of like, my daughter, don't you know that
Yeah.
I've created all of this for you? This is all
Yeah.
for you. And I remember just feeling that, embodying that very clearly of, yeah, that's right. I forgot. Sorry. Thanks.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So the last question is so in those years that you went through from 13 to 16, right, which were rough and you were rebellious and you were doing all the things that you shouldn't be doing. If you were the Marta of today,
hmm
what would you tell that 13 to 16-year-old girl to get her through that hard period of her life?
Um, I would just tell her to stop it. That's what's coming to mind. So maybe if this is, some like a crazy multiple reality type of thing, maybe that is me now talking to the previous self, and maybe
maybe
that's the divine thing that came through out of nowhere for no particular. Stop it. What are you doing?
Yeah, if
there are other ways to have fun and to stimulate your mind.
That's right. If we're reliving all of the realities at each point in our lives, then that moment that you can't pinpoint might have been the moment we just had.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I love that. And I did get full chills when you said that. So
that's good. Awesome. I like it. Yeah.
So cool.
If you haven't seen that movie.
Which one?
Interstellar. My 13-year-old raves about it, wanted me to watch it, and that's what it felt like, an interstellar moment.
Yeah, Matt talks about that movie all the time, and to be honest, I haven't seen it. There's like a handful of movies that are similar plot lines, and he's like, you need to watch all these movies. And so at some point in time we'll sit down and watch them all. But
he loved it.
Yeah.
My 13-year-old was like, you have to watch this. And if I got distracted, he'd be like, watch this part. Stop. Not doing anything else.
I love it. I love it. That's so cool. Well, Marta, I'm so blessed just to have you in my life. I'm excited for our book project that's coming, which I know we'll talk about in the next couple episodes between this podcast and yours.
Yeah.
And I just, I feel such great energy from you, and I'm excited to learn more about you. And we will definitely do another episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to go get that 13-year-old from track practice.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. How can people follow you? And just a note, we will put it in the show notes also.
Yeah. Go and find my name on Instagram. That's the best way to do it, where I typically share everything that's going on, or Facebook. Just look up my name, Marta Sauret Greca, on Instagram or Facebook. Between those two platforms, you'll get what's going on.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on again today. Thank you, all of our listeners, for listening this afternoon to Evolve Through God, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.